Hey guys, I hope you're well. This may not be of interest to too many of you, but I realize not all of you guys are electronic technicians, nor are all of you guys into restoring radios. And I figured I'd talk about restuffing these electrolytic capacitors and how I plan to go about it. Okay, as you can see, those three holes, that's where they were mounted. Okay. That big metal canned one was in the hole right there, center screen. The other two were mounted in those two holes, okay? Removing them wasn't that terrible for a couple reasons. One, I got rid of the resistors. They'll all be reused. They're all okay. But they had to come out because of the rat's nest of wiring. They were all mounted on the terminals of this capacitor. So once I took those all out, it was much easier to access those lugs on that capacitor. And another thing that made it easier, Heathkit uses solid wire. They don't use stranded wire. And that made it much, much easier to unwrap all those wires. And by the way, I mentioned before how the builder he refused to cut off excess lead links. Look at that wire, man. Look how much insulation he stripped off. It's an inch. You might want 3/8 of an inch would be great. That's a whole inch. And what did he do with the excess? Nothing. He left it to short out to the chassis and other parts around it. But I digress. Here are the new caps for this canned electrolytic. Now, the only way to go about restuffing this is you have to cut the can. I can't point because of my I'm holding the phone right in there. But you got to do a good job because your work will always be visible. Nothing will be covering that cut unless you want to cover it with something. Boy, I've got to stop whistling. I can't stop whistling, man. The hell, Chuck? So I'm gonna go about doing that. Now it would be a lot easier to cut that apart with a Dremel tool, but I don't have one. I gave it to Kyle when he moved. Why, I don't know. That was one of the more stupid things I've done lately. So I'm just going to take a hacksaw and cut it in half. Right under there. So we'll see how it goes. As far as fitting the new parts inside that can, they might just fit. Just. But those three caps have to go into the can, stacked like a triangle, you know what I mean. The two bigger ones have to go into the can side by side, and I think they will. If they will, then I can get all those caps, those 4 caps inside that can. And what you do, guys, when you put your new caps into the can, once you gut the can and clean it out, and you've got your new caps into the can or ready to slide back in, what you do, oftentimes you can't make an electrical connection to those lugs on the inside because originally they were spot welded or for example, you can't solder to the lug on the inside. What do? You drill a little hole next to each of those lugs and you bring the lead of the capacitor out through that hole. And then you wrap the lead around its associated lug. And you really can't tell that it's been restuffed. Well, you can, but outwardly it looks normal. Okay, that's my plan for that guy. These two, I was a little nervous about whether I'd even be able to get this cardboard sleeve off. See, that's just an empty sleeve. And they use tar. Come on, man. Come on, man. They use tar to mount this. And the reason they do that, they want to insulate that can from, they want to insulate the can. I'm at a loss for words. You don't always have that can connected to ground. For example, in voltage doublers or in negative bias supplies, oftentimes you'll have the positive connected to ground in a negative bias supply, but therefore you have to float that can above ground. And that's the purpose of that phenolic mounting device. I'm at a loss for words. It lets you mount that capacitor on a metal chassis whilst isolating the can from ground. And you can do the same thing with, sometimes capacitors have kind of like a clamp. It clamps onto that, and that's how it's mounted to the chassis. And that's why the paper, to insulate the cap from the clamp. Check it out, man. Look, this lighting's terrible. The way I got that sleeve off was just with a heat gun, and it wasn't hard. It came right off. Didn't have to get it that hot either. Nice and toasty warm, and it slid right off. And that stuff there, man, I thought maybe I'd melt it with the heat gun and wipe it off. And no, it didn't really want to melt it off. But what I did notice is that with it back at room temperature, you could just scrape it right off. Scrapes right off. It's more like chipping it off. But each of those caps gets a 47 microfarad modern electrolytic. And so that's the plan. That's the plan. I'll bring you back when I've tried to cut these open. Boy, we're 7 minutes in. So I'm going to take this guy and this guy out to the garage and have my way with them with a hacksaw. Wish me luck. Bye, guys. Hey, guys. Okay, I want to show you what I've done. I cut this guy apart with a hacksaw, and it was really easy. This is some super thin aluminum. Very easy to do. It took about 1 minute. The whole thing here, it took me 2.5 hours to do all of this work, to cut them apart, clean them out, and then mount the new capacitors inside. So I just wanted to show you. I write the date that I recap it on there. I write recap and the date. It's a kind of a sorted looking affair, but I got all 4 capacitors to fit in the can. And that's the negative lead, which comes down and joins the negative lead for the other 3. That's the positive lead I've extended down. I'll tape the connection. Excuse me. Gosh, I didn't have any heat shrink. I'll tape the connection. Then generally what I'll do is make a cardstock tube to line this aluminum can with. Stick it together. So I could have done a better job. You'll always see that seam, but at least it's better than having a hole in the chassis, and having all 4 capacitors mounted underneath. And if you were to do that, you'd have to put a couple terminal strips underneath. Alternatively, if you didn't want to restuff this guy, you don't have to, but you got to cut it apart. If you cut it apart and gut the thing, then remount it in the chassis, that would afford you these 4 lugs and make it look stock. And you wouldn't have to buy terminal strips that way. But one thing I could have done differently would be to cut it up a little farther I think maybe that's what most guys do. Cut it up a half inch or a 3/4 of an inch or whatever. You can still empty everything out just fine, but that would let you put some kind of tube inside a joiner tube. Because right now I've got no way to join them other than glue. I guess I'll use some epoxy, a few dabs of epoxy, and glue it back together. You know what I mean? So that's that one. Wasn't hard to do. And when I'm done, the radio will look stock. This one's all done. I've already mounted the cap inside. It's weird. It's featherweight compared to the original. I need a pointer. There's a pointer. Maybe you can see the two leads from the capacitor. There, you can see it. That hole in the middle is already there. It was a vent hole. I just drilled it out, cleaned it out with a drill bit, and I drilled another hole here for the negative lead. So there you go. And I thought I'd show you inside this can. You can see all the black tar stuff in there. It's not gooey. You can touch it and your finger doesn't get messy. It's not the prettiest thing. Some guys would be a perfectionist type and want that cap to sit in the center of the can. But why? This way, the leads are longer for me. And anyway, all I do at this point, a few drops of cyanoacrylic glue, glue it together. So that one just needs to be glued. And that one, hi Scout. Hi. Hey Scout. Hey Scout. What you doing? Where's Scout? Hi Scout. Hi buddy. Let's make the guy sick. Let's spin around. Hi buddy. Okay. I'm ready to remount these caps in the chassis and get on with things. I want to do this. I want to troubleshoot this thing and see why the output tube is cooking. Did a little poking around, but I need to power it up and take some voltage readings that'll guide me in my troubleshooting of that output tube, audio output tube. Hope you're well. Hope you'll try giving cap restuffing a go. Hey guys, I just realized I forgot to show you the best part. Yeah, most of you have never seen one of these electrolytics cut apart, these vintage electrolytics, right? So front center is my container, and it brings back memories, man, of the stainless steel bowl parked next to your body on the operating table whilst having orthopedic surgery. You know, it's in the stainless steel bowl. I better leave it at that. It also reminds me of the larger stainless steel bowl next to the table, if you want to call it that, the drainage table in the autopsy suite. Now, that stainless steel bowl would be oftentimes or always covered with aluminum foil by the time I got there after midnight, all alone in the dark autopsy suite. In that bowl, well, in this container is the guts from that electrolytic cap. Oh man, I'm shaky. I'm going to have to put you on tripod. Hang on. And guys, to look in that stainless steel bowl in the autopsy room suite is amazing. part of life. Look at that. That nasty ass. It's like feels waxy. And what it is it's foil. 2 foils separated by paper of some kind. And with a dielectric paste all rolled up. That's 4 capacitors into one big roll. Yeah. Got these. That's the remains of one of those black capacitors right there. That came out of, that's the other half of the can. You know, because I only have a nub of that can sticking up. That's the rest of it. Another one, the other black can. That's the black kind of tar crap, the black stuff. That was in all of those capacitors. It's weird. Feels like more like a hard wax than a tar. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed my autopsy segment of this restoration, of this recap job on my beloved HW-16. I'll talk to you later, guys. I'm sorry. Bye, guys. See, guys, I got nobody to talk to about this stuff. You know? I don't mean the electronics. I mean my old job. 73.